I was reaching for my coffee when I heard my father's voice through the phone, clear and cold. "We need to get him out of that house." My hand froze midair. The call I'd made to wish him a safe trip hadn't disconnected. Through that tiny speaker, I heard him and Sharon planning to steal my inheritance, forge documents, and throw me out like garbage. After 28 years of being his son, I finally understood. I was nothing to him but an obstacle to remove. 3 months before that phone call changed everything, I sat in a lawyer's office watching my grandmother's final wishes unfold. The cancer had taken her slowly, painfully, and I'd been there every single day for 2 years. I'd learned to change her IV bags, memorized which pills came at which hours, and held her hand through the worst nights when the pain medication wasn't enough. My father Robert had visited exactly 4 times during those 2 years, and each visit lasted less than an hour. "The house at 427 Maple Street," the lawyer read, adjusting his glasses, including all contents and the surrounding 2 acres, "I leave entirely to my grandson, Timothy James Walker." The silence in that room was so complete I could hear the fluorescent lights humming above us. My father's face went through a transformation I'll never forget. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally, a rage so pure it turned his skin purple. But Robert Walker was nothing if not a performer. He swallowed that rage, packed it down somewhere deep, and forced his lips into something resembling a smile. "Well, that's wonderful for Timothy," he said, his voice straining like a guitar string about to snap. "Mom always did have a soft spot for him." Sharon, my stepmother, grabbed his hand so hard her knuckles went white. She'd been practically measuring the windows for new curtains during the entire meeting. The house was worth at least $400,000 according to the last tax assessment, and they'd been planning their retirement around it. The lawyer slid an envelope across the table to me. "She also left you this letter, Timothy. Said you should read it when you're alone." That night, sitting in what was now my house, I opened grandmother's letter. Her handwriting was shaky, but clear. "My dear Timothy, I've watched your father fail you every day since your mother died. I've seen him give his love to another woman's children while treating you like an unwanted guest in your own life. This house is my way of protecting you. You were the only one who saw me as a person, not a wallet or an obligation. Don't let them take this from you. You deserve so much more than the crumbs of affection they've thrown your way." I cried then, really cried. For the first time since Mom's funeral 16 years ago, grandmother had seen it all. The way Robert's face would light up when Brad or Connor walked in the room, only to go flat when he saw me. The Christmas mornings where Sharon's boys got mountains of presents, while I got practical things like socks and school supplies. The family vacations I wasn't invited on because someone needs to watch the house or we only have 4 tickets. The next morning, Robert and Sharon showed up with flowers and a casserole. It was the first meal Sharon had cooked for me in 5 years. "Timothy, sweetheart," Sharon cooed, a term she'd never once used for me. "We were thinking we should all stick together during this difficult time. Family needs to support each other, don't you think?" "We'd like to keep living here, son," Robert added, and that word son sounded so foreign in his mouth. "Just until we figure things out. The market's terrible for buying right now." I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming to refuse. But that desperate 12-year-old boy who lost his mother, that kid who spent 16 years trying to earn a single genuine smile from his father, that part of me whispered, "Maybe now he'll love you." "Of course you can stay," I heard myself say. "We're family." The transformation was instant. Robert actually hugged me. It was awkward and brief, but it was the first time he'd voluntarily touched me in years. Sharon kissed my cheek and called me a sweet boy. For a moment, I let myself believe things could change. I was making good money as a software developer, working for a tech company downtown. 45 an hour wasn't making me rich, but it was steady. I'd been saving to move out for years, but grandmother got sick, and I couldn't leave her. Now I owned the house free and clear. No mortgage, just property taxes and maintenance. It should have been perfect. Brad and Connor still lived at home despite being 25 and 23. Brad worked part-time at a gym and spent the rest of his time building his Instagram presence. Connor had dropped out of college twice and was currently finding himself. Robert paid for their cars, their insurance, their cell phones, everything. When I turned 18, he'd handed me a bill for $500 for my share of the household expenses. "It'll teach you responsibility," he'd said then. But Brad and Connor never learned about responsibility. They learned about entitlement, and they learned it well. 2 months into our new arrangement, the facade began cracking. It started small, the way poison always does. Robert would make little comments at dinner about how generous I was being, letting them stay in my house, always putting air quotes around the word "my" like it was a joke we all understood. "Must be nice," he said one evening, cutting into his steak, "inheriting a house you didn't pay for. Some of us had to work our whole lives for what we have." "I took care of Grandma for 2 years," I reminded him quietly. "And I took care of you for 18, he shot back. "Where's my house?" Sharon started redecorating without asking. I came home from a 12-hour shift debugging code to find my mother's painting gone from the living room wall, replaced with a gaudy mirror she'd bought at Home Goods. "Where's Mom's painting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Oh, that old thing? I put it in the garage. It was so depressing, all those dark colors. This brightens up the space, don't you think?" I retrieved the painting that night, hanging it in my bedroom instead. It was one of the last things Mom painted before the cancer took her ability to hold a brush. A sunrise over water, all purples and golds and hope. Sharon called it depressing. I called it everything I had left. Brad and Connor started treating the house like a frat party venue. Every weekend, I'd come home to find strangers in my living room, empty beer bottles on grandmother's antique coffee table, cigarette burns on the deck she'd loved. When I confronted them, Connor just laughed. "Chill out, Timothy. It's not like you have any friends to invite over anyway." The cruelty was so casual, so practiced. They'd learned it from the masters. One Thursday, I came home early with a migraine and found Brad giving a tour to his friend Jake. "This'll all be mine soon," Brad was saying, gesturing at the living room. "My dad's working on the legal stuff now. The old lady wasn't right in the head at the end, you know? Changed her will when she was basically senile." "That's a lie," I said from the doorway. Brad didn't even flinch. "Oh, hey, Timothy. Just showing Jake around. You don't mind, right? Family and all that." That night at dinner, I brought it up. Robert's response changed everything. "Brad's not wrong, you know," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Mom was on a lot of medication at the end. Her judgment was clearly impaired. I've been talking to Marcus. You remember him? He's a lawyer now. He says we might have a case." "You're going to contest the will?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Not contest exactly. Just clarify things. Make sure Mom's real wishes are honored." "Her real wishes are in the will she signed," I said, my voice shaking. "The one that left the house to me." Robert finally looked at me then, and all pretense of fatherly affection was gone. "You really think she'd choose you over her own son? You probably manipulated her while she was weak. Everyone knows how vulnerable the elderly can be to pressure." "I never asked her for anything." "No? Then why were you always hanging around? 2 years of playing nurse, and suddenly you inherit everything. Sounds suspicious to me." Sharon nodded along. "People are already talking, Timothy, about how you isolated her at the end. Wouldn't let anyone else visit." "You never tried to visit. I begged you to come see her." "That's not how I remember it," Robert said coldly. The next few weeks descended into psychological warfare. Sharon stopped cooking my portions of dinner. I'd come home to find them all eating together, no place set for me. "Oh, I thought you were working late," Sharon would say. "There might be some leftover rice in the fridge." My home office, the second bedroom where I worked on freelance projects, became a constant target. Files were moved, my computer was tampered with, client paperwork went missing. After finding someone had tried to guess my password enough times to lock my system, I installed a hidden camera. It was small, disguised as a phone charger, completely invisible unless you knew what to look for. The footage was illuminating and heartbreaking. Robert rifling through my desk drawers, Sharon photographing my bank statements, Brad and Connor seeing if any of my passwords were written down. They were building a case against me in my own home. One evening, I overheard Sharon on the phone with her sister. She was in the kitchen, not realizing I was in the hallway. "Once we get the house, we're selling immediately," she was saying. Robert promised Brad he could have the money for his wedding, and Connor needs a fresh start in California. 500,000 would set us all up nicely. We could finally get that place in Florida. What about Timothy? Her sister asked, loud enough for me to hear through the phone. Sharon laughed. Actually laughed. What about him? He's almost 30 and still acts like a wounded teenager. It's pathetic. He can go rent some sad little apartment where he belongs. Maybe finally grow up without his grandmother's house to hide in. I stood there in the dark hallway, my hands shaking. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were already spending the money from its sale. I was nothing but an inconvenience to be removed, a problem to be solved. A week before their big Caribbean cruise, Robert made the announcement at dinner like he was doing me a favor. Sharon and I are taking Brad and Connor on a 2-week cruise, he said, not looking up from his plate. Someone needs to stay and watch the house, so you'll hold down the fort. A cruise? I kept my voice neutral. That sounds nice. Connor smirked. It's a celebration. Dad got a bonus at work and Brad just landed a sponsorship deal with a supplement company. $50 worth of protein powder, Brad clarified, puffing up like it was $1 million contract. But it's just the beginning. They spent the rest of dinner discussing their plans. The restaurants they'd eat at, the excursions they'd take, the sun they'd soak up while I stayed here in February cold, watching their house. No, watching my house, that they treated as theirs. The night before they left, something made me call my father. Maybe it was hope. That stupid, resilient hope that refuses to die no matter how many times it's crushed. Maybe I wanted to wish him a safe trip, to pretend for just a moment we were a normal family. Hi, Dad, I said when he answered. Just wanted to wish you all a safe trip tomorrow. Oh, thanks. He sounded surprised, maybe even suspicious. We leave at 6 in the morning. Don't wait up. I won't. Have fun and be safe. Yeah, sure. Bye. I heard the phone rustle like he was putting it down, but the call didn't end. His phone must have missed the end button, the screen still lit up in his pocket or on a table. I almost hung up myself, but then I heard Sharon's voice. Who was that? Timothy. Wishing us a safe trip, Sharon snorted. Guilty conscience, probably. He knows what he did was wrong, taking that house. Doesn't matter. Marcus says we've got a solid case. I met with him yesterday. My finger hovered over the end call button, but I couldn't press it. Instead, I grabbed my laptop, opened a recording program, and held my phone up to the microphone. You think he suspects anything? Sharon asked. Timothy? Please. He's too soft. Always has been. Just like his mother. Sarah was weak, Sharon agreed. No backbone. At least she had the decency to die quickly. My blood turned to ice. I'd never heard them speak about my mother so bluntly, so cruelly. The cancer did us a favor, Robert said, and I had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping. I was already seeing you by then anyway. If she'd lived, the divorce would have been messy. And expensive, Sharon added. This way you got the life insurance, the sympathy from everyone, and me. They laughed together, a sound that made my stomach turn. So walk me through the plan again, Sharon said. I want to make sure we have everything covered. It's simple, Robert replied. Marcus has a friend at the courthouse who can backdate some documents. We'll claim Mom was showing signs of dementia for years, that I was managing her affairs. The will she signed leaving everything to Timothy was clearly the product of a confused mind. What about witnesses? The lawyer who did the will is young, new to town. Marcus knows the judge. He says these cases usually favor blood relatives, especially when there's evidence of mental decline. And we have evidence? We will. I've been collecting her medical records. Highlight the right things, ignore others, and it paints a picture. Plus, I've got people ready to testify that Timothy isolated her, wouldn't let me visit. Brilliant, Sharon purred. And Timothy won't fight back? With what money? Legal battles are expensive. He makes decent money, but not enough to compete with Marcus. He'll roll over like he always does. Remember when Brad took his car in high school and wrecked it? Timothy just accepted it, didn't even ask for insurance money. That was $5,000 worth of damage, Sharon laughed. And he just took it. Because he's weak, Robert said with such disdain it hurt to hear. Just like Sarah. Always trying to keep the peace. Always backing down. It's pathetic. A real man would fight for what's his. Speaking of which, Sharon's voice turned calculating. What do we do with him once we have the house? Change the locks while he's at work. His stuff goes in storage if he's lucky, on the lawn if he pisses me off. He can find some studio apartment on the wrong side of town where he belongs. Brad wants to move in right away with Jessica. He can have the master bedroom. Connor can keep his room. We'll use Timothy's office for storage until we sell. 500,000, Sharon said dreamily. Split 4 ways, that's 125 each. More for us, Robert corrected. Brad and Connor get 50 each for their fresh starts. We take the rest for retirement. Florida? Florida. Maybe even get a boat. They kept talking, their voices becoming more animated as they planned their future with my money, in my house, while I sat forgotten in their calculations like I'd been forgotten my whole life. They discussed where they'd vacation, what cars they'd buy, how successful Brad and Connor would be with their investments. The boy never even fought for anything, Robert said about me. Remember when we didn't invite him to Brad's graduation dinner? He just accepted it. Or Christmas in Vegas that year, Sharon added. Told him we needed someone to watch the house. He actually thanked me for trusting him with the responsibility, Robert laughed. Who thanks someone for being excluded from Christmas? Someone desperate for any scrap of approval, Sharon said. It's actually sad. A nearly 30-year-old man still trying to make Daddy proud. He'll never get it, Robert said firmly. I look at him and all I see is Sarah. Those same eyes, always looking hurt, always disappointed. She could never just be happy with what she had. What did she have to be unhappy about? Me, apparently. Always wanting to talk about feelings, about spending time together. Couldn't understand that a man has to work, has to have his own life. And then Timothy came along. The biggest mistake. If Sarah hadn't gotten pregnant, I could have left cleanly. But no, she had to trap me with a baby. Thank God for cancer, Sharon said, and they both laughed. Thank God for cancer. They laughed at my mother's death. The phone stayed connected for 43 minutes total. I heard about their real estate plans, their schemes with Marcus, even their plan to claim I'd been stealing from grandmother's accounts. They had no proof because it never happened. But as Robert said, accusations are enough to make him look guilty. When the call finally ended, I sat in darkness for 3 hours. I didn't move, didn't cry, didn't rage. I just sat there, replaying everything I'd heard, letting it sink into my bones. 28 years of hoping my father would love me. 28 years of making excuses for his coldness. 28 years of believing that if I just tried harder, achieved more, needed less, he might finally see me as worthy. But now I knew the truth. I was never going to be enough because I was Sarah's son, and Sarah was the woman he'd wanted to leave. I was the trap that kept him in a marriage he hated, the responsibility he never wanted. Every time he looked at me, he saw his biggest mistake. Well, Robert was right about one thing. I was Sarah's son, but he was wrong about everything else. My mother wasn't weak. She was kind. She chose gentleness in the face of cruelty. She loved even when love wasn't returned. But she was also smart. And as I sat there in the dark, I remembered something she told me before she died. Timothy, she'd said, holding my hand in her hospital bed. I know your father is difficult. I know he doesn't show love the way you need. But don't let his coldness make you cold. Don't let his cruelty make you cruel. Be smart, be strong, but always be kind. That's how you really win. I'd been kind for 28 years. Now it was time to be smart. The next morning, I watched from my bedroom window as they loaded into Robert's SUV, all smiles and excitement. Sharon wore a new sundress that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Brad and Connor were both in designer sunglasses, taking selfies before they even left the driveway. Robert looked satisfied, like a man who'd already won. Have a great trip, I called from the doorway, waving like the grateful, obedient son they expected me to be. Take care of everything, Robert said, and the double meaning wasn't lost on me. As soon as their car turned the corner, I got to work. First, I called my boss, Jennifer, a woman who'd been more of a mentor to me than my father ever was. I need to take the next 2 weeks off, I told her. Family emergency. Is everything okay, Timothy? It will be, I said. but I need to handle some things. I have vacation time saved up. Take what you need. Your job will be here when you get back. Next, I called a real estate attorney, not someone local who might know Marcus, but a firm from the city with a reputation for being ruthless. The consultation would cost me $300, but I needed to know where I stood legally. Your grandmother's will is ironclad, the attorney, Mrs. Chen, told me after reviewing the documents. Recent, properly witnessed, filed correctly. Your grandmother's medical records show she was of sound mind until the very end. Any attempt to contest it would be frivolous. What if they try anyway? Then they'd waste a lot of money losing. Is there something you're not telling me, Mr. Walker? I played her the recording. 43 minutes of conspiracy, fraud, and criminal intent. She listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. This is serious, she said when it finished. They're discussing conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and theft. You could have them arrested. I don't want them arrested, I said. I want them gone. She smiled then, the kind of smile a shark might give before feeding. I think I can help with that. The next call was to a realtor who'd been leaving cards in our mailbox for years. Tom Morrison specialized in quick cash sales, usually to developers looking for teardowns in good neighborhoods. The Maple Street house? Tom's voice practically vibrated with excitement. I've had my eye on that property for 5 years. Prime location, huge lot, perfect for development. What could you offer? Cash? Quick close? For that property? $500,000. Easy. Maybe more if you don't need time to move out. I have a developer who would snap it up tomorrow. How fast could we close? With cash? No mortgage approval needed? 10 days if you're motivated. I'm motivated. But I need one thing. Complete discretion until it's done. Mr. Walker, in my business, discretion is everything. I spent the next 3 days sorting through the house, separating what was truly mine from what was theirs. My mother's paintings, grandmother's jewelry box she'd specifically left me, photo albums from before Sharon entered our lives. Everything went into a storage unit I rented across town. The security camera in my office had been running for weeks, and I finally reviewed all the footage. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Robert had been in my room at least 12 times, going through my papers, trying to access my computer, even reading my journal. Sharon had photographed my bank statements, my tax returns, anything that might show financial information. But the worst was Brad and Connor discussing their plans. Once Dad gets the house, I'm going to throw the biggest party, Brad said. Celebrate getting rid of the leech. The leech? Connor laughed. That's good. Timothy the leech, sucking up to Grandma for her money. Dad says he probably convinced her he'd take care of her. Manipulated her. Well, he won't be manipulating anyone from a studio apartment, Connor replied, if he can even afford that. They went on to discuss how they'd divide my belongings. Connor wanted my gaming computer. Brad claimed my television. They were picking apart my life like vultures over a carcass, and I wasn't even dead yet. But the most damning footage came from a week before they left. Robert was on the phone with Marcus in my office, and the camera caught every word. I need those documents to look perfect, Robert was saying. Dated 2 years ago, showing I had power of attorney. That's forgery. Marcus's voice came through the speakerphone. It's correcting an oversight. I should have had power of attorney. I was her son. It'll cost extra. My guy at the courthouse isn't cheap. How much? $5,000 should cover it. Fine. But it needs to be perfect. Timothy can't fight what looks legitimate. What about the witnesses to the real will? Leave them to me. People misremember things all the time, especially with the right incentive. I saved that footage to 3 different cloud services and a physical drive I put in my safety deposit box at the bank. The house sale moved faster than even Tom had predicted. The developer was eager, the paperwork was clean, and my ownership was undisputed. We agreed on $520,000, cash, with a closing date that would happen while my family was still on their cruise. You sure you don't need more time to move out? Tom asked at the signing. I'm already gone, I told him, and I was. Everything that mattered was in storage or my hotel room. The rest was just a house full of bad memories and broken promises. The night before closing, I walked through the house one last time. I stood in the kitchen where my mother used to make Sunday pancakes before she got sick. I sat on the porch where grandmother taught me to play chess, patient with every mistake I made. I lingered in my bedroom, where I'd cried myself to sleep so many nights, wondering why my father couldn't love me. "I'm sorry, Grandma," I whispered to the empty house. "I know you wanted this to be my home, but it stopped being home the day they moved in with their hate." I left the keys on the kitchen counter with a note for the new owners, then drove to the hotel where I'd been staying. A nice place, with room service and a pool. It cost $150 a night, but I could afford it. For the first time in my life, I could afford to treat myself well. The closing happened on a Wednesday morning. I signed papers for an hour, walked out with a cashier's check for $520,000, and drove straight to the bank. I opened a new account at a different bank from the one Robert used, deposited the check, and waited for it to clear. While waiting, I had Tom draft a simple note on his letterhead. "This property has been sold. The new owners will take possession immediately. For questions regarding personal belongings, contact Meyer and Associates Law Firm." I had it laminated and drove back to the house one last time. The locks had already been changed by the new owners, per our agreement. I taped the note to the front door, at exactly eye level, where Robert couldn't miss it. Then I drove 3 blocks away, parked where I could see the house but wouldn't be immediately visible, and waited. They were due back Saturday afternoon. I had 3 more days to prepare for the show. Those 3 days passed in a blur of activity. I met with Mrs. Chen again, giving her full power to act on my behalf. I warned Jennifer that my father might show up at work. I even called the police non-emergency line to let them know there might be a disturbance at the Maple Street address on Saturday. "We're not expecting any violence," I told the officer. "Just some upset people who've just discovered they've been evicted from a house they don't own. We'll have a car in the area," he assured me. Saturday came bright and cold. I'd been in my car since noon, heat running, classical music playing softly, the same kind my mother used to listen to while she painted. At 3:47, Robert's SUV turned onto Maple Street. I could see them through the windshield, all smiles and tanned skin. Brad was in the back showing Connor something on his phone. Sharon was touching up her lipstick in the mirror. Robert was gesturing animatedly, probably telling some story about the cruise. They pulled into the driveway like they owned the place. Robert actually honked the horn like he was announcing their triumphant return. They climbed out, grabbing luggage, still laughing about something. "Home sweet home," I heard Robert say as they approached the door. And then the show began. Robert reached the door first, already pulling out his keys while telling Brad about plans to renovate the kitchen. "We'll put in an island, granite countertops, really modernize the place before we sell." The key went in but wouldn't turn. He pulled it out, looked at it, tried again. What the hell? He jiggled the handle, pushed the key harder. "What's wrong?" Sharon asked, coming up behind him with her massive suitcase. "Key's not working." He tried his other keys, the spare, even the one he thought I didn't know about hidden in his wallet. That's when he saw the note. From my spot down the street, I could see his face change as he read those simple words. The tan from his cruise went pale, then red, then purple. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Just a strangled sort of gasp. Then the scream came. "What the hell is this?" He ripped the note off the door, crumpling it, then smoothing it out to read again like the words might change. "This property has been sold," Sharon read over his shoulder. "That's impossible. Timothy couldn't have. He wouldn't dare." "Timothy!" Robert's roar echoed off the houses. Mrs. Patterson across the street came out onto her porch, phone already in hand. Brad grabbed the note, read it, then laughed bitterly. "You said he was too weak to fight back. You said he'd roll over like always." "Shut up," Robert snapped. "This is some kind of joke. It has to be." He pulled out his phone, frantically dialing my number. I watched it ring on my dashboard mount, his name flashing on the screen. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. By the 5th call, he was leaving voicemails. "Timothy, what have you done? This is illegal. You can't sell a house with tenants. Call me back immediately." Second voicemail. "I'm calling the police. This is theft. Grand theft. You think you're smart? I'll destroy you. Third, please, son, let's talk about this. There's been a misunderstanding. Call me back. Fourth, you worthless piece of garbage. Just like your mother, sneaky and manipulative, I'll sue you for everything. Fifth, where are our things? If you've touched our belongings, I'll have you arrested. Sharon was on her phone too, calling her sister from what I could hear through her raised voice. He sold it! The little bastard sold the house while we were gone. Connor was surprisingly quiet, standing back and watching his parents unravel. Brad kept trying the windows, actually attempting to pry one open with his pocket knife. Should we call the cops? Connor finally asked. I am calling the cops, Robert shouted, dialing 911. I watched as he paced the lawn, gesticulating wildly while talking to the dispatcher. Within 10 minutes, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Martinez, whom I'd spoken with earlier, got out with his partner. Sir, I need you to calm down, Officer Martinez said as Robert immediately started shouting about theft and illegal eviction. He sold my house. My son sold my house while I was gone. Is your name on the deed, sir? No, but I live here. I'm a tenant. Do you have a lease agreement? Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I don't need a lease. I'm his father. Without a lease, or your name on the deed, you're considered a guest. The homeowner has the right to sell their property. This is a civil matter, sir. Civil matter? He stole our belongings. Officer Martinez looked at the note again. It says here to contact this law firm about personal belongings. Have you done that? I don't want to contact a law firm. I want my house back. Sir, it's not your house. I need you to calm down or leave the premises. The new owners won't want you trespassing. Trespassing? Trespassing? I've lived here for months. Not anymore, Officer Martinez said firmly. Now, you can contact that law firm about your belongings, or you can continue making a scene and I'll have to arrest you for disturbing the peace. Mrs. Patterson had been joined by Mr. Chen from 2 doors down, and Deborah from across the street. They were all recording on their phones. Robert noticed, and his face went even redder. This is private family business, he shouted at them. Looks pretty public to me, Mrs. Patterson called back. She'd never liked Robert, not since he'd yelled at her cat for walking through the garden. Brad made one more attempt at the window, and Officer Martinez stepped forward. Sir, step away from the window. That's attempted breaking and entering. Our stuff is in there, Brad protested. Then contact the law firm, the officer repeated. But if you break that window, you're going to jail. Sharon had started crying, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. Where are we supposed to go? Hotel? Connor suggested, speaking up for the first time. I mean, we need somewhere to stay tonight. With what money? Sharon snapped. We just spent everything on that cruise. I have credit cards, Robert said through gritted teeth. We'll get a hotel, call Marcus, and sort this out. They loaded back into the SUV, but not before Robert walked to where the neighbors were still watching. You'll all be hearing from my lawyer, he announced. You're witnesses to theft. Only thing I witnessed, Mrs. Patterson said loudly, was you trying to break into someone else's house? Robert's response was not suitable for polite company. Officer Martinez stepped forward again, and Robert quickly got in his car. As they pulled away, I could see him still screaming, pounding the steering wheel. My phone exploded with texts and calls, not just from Robert and Sharon, but from extended family. Robert was already spinning his tale, telling everyone I'd stolen the house, sold it illegally, left them homeless. I drove back to my hotel and called Mrs. Chen. They've made contact? She asked. Multiple voicemails ranging from threats to pleas. They've also called the police and are spreading lies to the family. Perfect. Save all the voicemails. As for the family, I suggest you send them the recording. All of it? Every word. Let them hear what Robert and Sharon really think about you and your mother. I spent the evening editing the 43-minute recording down to the most damning parts. Robert saying my mother's cancer did them a favor. Sharon calling me pathetic. Their plan to commit fraud. Their celebration of my future homelessness. I sent it to 17 family members with a simple message. Before you judge me for selling my house, Please listen to what my father and stepmother said about me when they thought I couldn't hear. The responses came within hours. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called crying. "Oh, Timothy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Robert was this cruel." Sarah would be heartbroken. Uncle James, Robert's own brother. "I always knew Robert was cold. But this is unforgivable." Cousin Mary. "Thank God your grandmother protected you. She knew what they were really like." The tide turned completely. Family members who'd initially criticized me were now calling Robert, demanding explanations. His own brother threatened to cut him off entirely. Sharon's sister refused to let them stay with her after hearing how they'd planned to use her connections at the courthouse for fraud. Meanwhile, Robert had checked into a budget motel on the outskirts of town, the kind with hourly rates and suspicious stains. Their credit cards, depleted from the cruise, could only cover a few nights. Sunday morning, Mrs. Chen called me. "They've been trying to reach me all night. 23 calls. I finally answered this morning. And I informed them that their belongings are in storage unit 47 at Secure Store on Highway 9. They have 30 days to collect them, after which they'll be considered abandoned. I also informed them that we have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and suggested they not pursue any legal action unless they want criminal charges filed." What did they say? "Your father used some very creative language. Then he asked about the money from the sale." And I laughed and hung up. Monday morning, Robert showed up at my workplace. I'd warned Jennifer this might happen, and security was ready. I watched from the break room window as he argued with the guard at the front desk, his face red, spittle flying. "I need to see my son. This is a family emergency." "Sir, you're not on the approved visitor list. I need you to leave." "I'm his father. I don't care if you're the Pope. No approval. No entry." Robert tried to push past, and that was a mistake. 2 more security guards appeared, and Robert found himself escorted out, threatened with arrest if he returned. He spent the rest of the day in the parking lot, waiting by my car. I simply stayed late, working on projects, until security did their evening sweep and made him leave. Tuesday brought shocking news. Marcus, Robert's lawyer friend, had been arrested. Not for anything related to our situation, but for fraud in an unrelated case involving elderly clients and forged wills. The irony was delicious. The local news covered it extensively, and suddenly Robert's plan to use Marcus became impossible. Wednesday, I got a call from Sharon's brother-in-law, Pete, who worked at the county clerk's office. "Hey, Timothy, just wanted you to know I had nothing to do with whatever Sharon was planning. When your lawyer contacted my supervisor about potential document tampering, I cooperated fully. I've been transferred to a different department, but I kept my job. Sharon, though, we're not speaking anymore." By Thursday, Robert was desperate enough to ask for a face-to-face meeting. He texted, not called, his voice probably raw from all the screaming he'd done. "Please, one conversation. Public place. I'll come alone." I agreed, but with conditions. We'd meet at Rosario's, a busy restaurant downtown. I wouldn't come alone. Mrs. Chen would be there, and so would Linda, my mother's sister who'd driven in from Chicago after hearing the recording. I arrived first, getting a table in the center of the restaurant, where everyone could see us. Mrs. Chen sat on my right, briefcase at her feet. Linda took my left, squeezing my hand under the table. Robert arrived looking haggard. His cruise tan had faded to a sickly yellow, his clothes were wrinkled, and he'd clearly not been sleeping. He sat across from us, shoulders slumped. "Timothy," he started, then noticed Linda. His face went pale. "Linda, I didn't know you'd be here." "I'm here for my nephew," Linda said coldly. "The one you've been torturing for 16 years. Robert tried to recover, straightening in his chair. "This is all a misunderstanding. Timothy, son, we can work this out. The house. You could buy another one. Split the money with us. It's only fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Like it was fair when you told people I manipulated Grandma?" "I never said that publicly." I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, and hit play. Robert's voice filled the restaurant just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Timothy probably manipulated her while she was weak. Everyone knows how vulnerable the elderly can be to pressure. Diners at other tables started paying attention. Robert reached for my phone, but Mrs. Chen blocked him. "That's evidence in a potential criminal case," she said calmly. "What criminal case?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud. We have you on recording discussing forging documents with Marcus Hoffman, who's currently in custody for fraud charges." Robert's facade cracked. "You recorded me? You illegally recorded me?" "You failed to end our call," I corrected. "I recorded a conversation you accidentally shared. Completely legal in this state." "This is about more than the house," Linda interjected. "Robert, how could you say those things about Sarah, that her cancer did you a favor?" Now people were definitely listening. A woman at the next table had stopped eating entirely, watching our drama unfold. "That was taken out of context," Robert stammered. I played another clip, Sharon's voice this time. "Thank God for cancer." Then Robert's laugh following it. The woman at the next table gasped audibly. Robert's mask finally slipped completely, his face contorted with rage. "Fine. You want the truth? Your mother was weak, pathetic, always whining about loneliness, always needing attention. She trapped me with you, and I've been paying for it ever since." "Sarah loved you," Linda said, tears in her eyes. "She loved you even when you were cheating on her with Sharon. She was dying anyway." The restaurant had gone nearly silent around us. Our waiter stood frozen, unsure whether to approach. "She was dying," Robert continued, his voice rising, "and all I could think about was finally being free. Free of her neediness, her sadness, her disappointment. But no, she had to leave me with you, her final revenge, making sure I'd never really be free." "Is that really how you see me?" I asked quietly. "As Mom's revenge?" For a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw something in his eyes that might have been regret, but it passed quickly, replaced by the familiar coldness. "You were never supposed to happen, Timothy. I was 23, had my whole life ahead of me. Then Sarah got pregnant, and suddenly I'm trapped in suburbia with a mortgage and a kid I never wanted." "Then why didn't you leave?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Because good men don't leave. My father would have disowned me. So I stayed, did my duty, provided. But I never signed up to love you." The honesty was brutal, but somehow freeing. Finally, after 28 years, the truth. "But you love Brad and Connor," I pointed out. "They're different. I chose Sharon. I chose to be their father figure. You were forced on me." Before I could respond, the restaurant door burst open. Sharon stumbled in, clearly drunk. Mascara smeared, designer clothes replaced with wrinkled jeans, and a stained sweatshirt. "There you are," she slurred, pointing at Robert. "You said you'd fix this. You promised." "Sharon, not now," Robert hissed. "Not now? Not now? We're living in a roach motel because of your worthless son." She stumbled to our table, grabbed a water glass, and threw it at me. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall behind us. The restaurant erupted. Staff rushed over. Other diners backed away. Someone called the police. "You ruined everything," Sharon screamed. "Brad's wedding is off. Jessica left him when she found out we're broke. Connor's having a breakdown, and it's all your fault." "Ma'am, you need to leave," the manager said, stepping between us. "I'm not going anywhere until he gives us our money." "It's not your money," I said calmly. "It never was." Sharon lunged at me, but Linda stood up, blocking her. At 62, my aunt was still formidable. "Touch my nephew, and I'll end you," Linda said quietly. The police arrived then, just as they had at the house. Sharon was escorted out in handcuffs, public intoxication and assault. Robert followed, but not before turning back one last time. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You've destroyed your family." "No," I replied. "I've freed myself from people who never saw me as family at all." The restaurant slowly returned to normal after they left. The manager comped our meal and apologized for the disturbance. Several diners came by our table. "Good for you, young man," an elderly woman said. "Family isn't always blood." "Your mother would be proud," Linda whispered, tears flowing freely now. "Sarah always worried about you. about how Robert would treat you after she was gone. She'd be so proud that you finally stood up for yourself. Mrs. Chen pulled out a document from her briefcase. There's one more thing, Timothy. Your father doesn't know this yet, but Sharon filed for divorce this morning. She's claiming Robert misled her about his financial situation, that he promised her a house he didn't own. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow I was. She's leaving him and taking half of what little he has left. The crews depleted their savings. The house was their retirement plan. Without it, they have nothing but debt. What about Brad and Connor? From what Sharon told her lawyer, Brad is moving back with his biological father in Texas. Connor is going to California, using what's left of his trust fund from his late grandfather. They both blame Robert for losing the house. So Robert had lost everything. His wife, his stepsons, his brother's respect, and the house he thought was his birthright. All because he couldn't love the son who'd spent 28 years trying to earn that love. 6 months have passed since that confrontation at Rosario's. 6 months since I sold the house and freed myself from the prison of false hope I'd been living in. The money from the sale didn't just change my bank account, it changed my entire life. I used $100,000 to start my own software development company. Nothing huge, just me and 2 other developers I'd met through freelance work. We specialize in applications for small businesses, the kinds of places that need custom solutions but can't afford big firms. We're doing well, better than I ever imagined. Turns out, when you're not constantly seeking approval from someone who'll never give it, you have a lot more energy for building something meaningful. The therapy helped more than I expected. Dr. Williams, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes, helped me understand that my father's inability to love me was never about my worth. It was about his limitations, his brokenness, his choice to remain bitter rather than heal. You were an innocent child who deserved love, she told me during one session. The fact that your father couldn't provide it says nothing about you and everything about him. I bought a house last month. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom cottage on the other side of town with a big backyard and a covered porch. It's in a quiet neighborhood where kids ride bikes and neighbors wave when you pass. Mrs. Thompson next door has already adopted me, bringing over casseroles and inviting me to her book club. A young man living alone needs good people around him, she said, and I couldn't agree more. I've been building my chosen family carefully, intentionally. Linda visits once a month, and we spend weekends going through photos of my mother, sharing stories, keeping her memory alive in a way Robert never allowed. She helped me hang Mom's paintings throughout my new house, and every morning I have coffee while looking at her sunrise over water, remembering that hope exists even in dark times. My employees, Marcus and Jennifer, different Jennifer from my old boss, have become real friends. We have dinner together every Friday, talking about more than just code and clients. They knew nothing about my past when we started working together, judged me only on who I am now. 3 weeks ago, I got a letter from Robert, an actual handwritten letter, forwarded by Mrs. Chen from her office. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Timothy, it began. I'm writing because I've had time to think. Too much time, probably, sitting in this empty apartment. Sharon took everything in the divorce. Brad and Connor won't return my calls. James says I need to make amends before he'll speak to me again. I've been seeing a therapist. Court ordered, after an incident I'm not proud of. He keeps asking me why I couldn't love you, and I keep saying it's because you reminded me of your mother. But that's not really true, is it? The truth is, you reminded me of the best parts of her. Her kindness, her patience, her ability to love, even when love wasn't returned. And those were the parts I could never understand. The parts that made me feel inferior. It was easier to be cruel than to admit I was the one who was lacking. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I stole 16 years of your life, made you feel worthless when you were anything but. Your mother would be devastated if she knew how I treated you. Sometimes I wonder if she did know, if that's why she looked so sad near the end. I'm working now, just retail, nothing special. The karma of it isn't lost on me, that I'm now struggling to pay rent while you're thriving. Sharon's already engaged to someone else, someone with money. Brad and Connor have made it clear I'm dead to them. Funny how quickly they abandoned me when the money ran out. I guess I taught them well, to only value people for what they can provide. Your grandmother left you that house because she saw what I refused to see. That you were the only one who loved without expecting anything in return. You took care of her because you loved her, not because you wanted her house. The irony is, if I'd just been a decent father, you probably would have shared everything with me anyway. You were always generous, even when you had no reason to be. I'm including a photo I found while packing. It's from your 5th birthday. Your mom made that train cake you wanted, and you were so happy you could barely sit still. I'm in the background, actually smiling. I'd forgotten I ever looked at you that way. I'd forgotten a lot of things, deliberately, because remembering hurt too much. I hope you're happy. I mean that. I hope you've found people who see your worth, who love you the way I should have. I hope you've kept your mother's kindness. But learn to protect yourself from people like me. Maybe someday, when you've healed from all the damage I caused, we could have coffee. Not as father and son, that ship has sailed, but maybe as two people trying to be better than they were. Robert. I sat with that letter for a long time. Read it maybe 20 times. Looking for manipulation, for the angle, but there wasn't one. Just a broken man finally seeing the wreckage he'd created. I wrote back a short note. Robert, I appreciate your letter and the honesty in it. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm not ready for coffee. I may never be. The wounds are deep, and some days they still bleed. But I want you to know I don't hate you. I've chosen to let go of hate, because carrying it was killing me slowly, the way carrying bitterness killed the part of you that could have loved me. I've included a check for $50,000. Not because I owe you anything, but because Mom would want me to show mercy, use it to rebuild your life, get proper help, maybe find some peace. This is goodbye, Robert. Please don't contact me again, unless I reach out first. I need time and space to continue healing. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Timothy. I sent it 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Chen confirmed the check was cashed, but says Robert has respected my request for no contact. Maybe he's learning. Maybe not. It's no longer my concern. My life now is full in ways I never imagined possible. I wake up without dread, go to sleep without crying, and spend my days building something I'm proud of. I have friends who genuinely care about me, a therapist who helps me navigate the complicated emotions, and a future that belongs entirely to me. Last week, I met someone. Her name is Emma, and she's a graphic designer who's doing some work for our company. She's funny and kind, and doesn't flinch when I tell her about my past. We're taking it slow. But when she smiles at me, I feel something I thought Robert had killed. The ability to trust that someone could love me just for being me. The house on Maple Street was torn down last month. I drove by to watch, expecting to feel sad. Instead, I felt free. They're building townhouses there now, places for new families to make new memories. The ghosts of my childhood are finally at rest. I visit Mom's grave every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers and updates about my life. I tell her about the business, about Emma, about how I'm finally becoming the person she always believed I could be. Sometimes I swear I can feel her presence, warm like sunlight, proud like she always was even when I had nothing to be proud of. The money from the house sale isn't just numbers in an account. It's freedom. It's possibility. It's the inheritance my grandmother really wanted to give me, the chance to build a life without the weight of people who refused to see my worth. But the greatest gift wasn't the money. It was that phone call, that accidentally unended call that revealed the truth I'd always suspected but never wanted to believe. It freed me from 28 years of false hope, from the exhausting effort of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Standing up to Robert didn't make me cruel like him. It made me stronger, clearer, about what I will and won't accept. I can still be kind, still be generous, still be my mother's son. But now I know how to protect those qualities, how to share them only with people who deserve them. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something beautiful despite them. It's choosing to become everything they said you couldn't be. It's learning that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. Robert was wrong about me being weak like my mother. We weren't weak. We were kind in the face of cruelty, hopeful despite disappointment, loving even when love wasn't returned. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength Robert will never understand, the kind that builds rather than destroys, that heals rather than hurts. The house is gone, but I'm still here, thriving, growing, living a life my mother would be proud of, and my grandmother somehow knew I was capable of. And that phone call that changed everything? It didn't reveal my father's betrayal. It revealed my freedom. Some people spend their whole lives trying to earn love from those incapable of giving it. I spent 28 years. But now I know the truth. The only approval I ever needed was my own. The only love that could save me was the love I learned to give myself. And the only family that matters is the one I choose. Every ending is also a beginning. My ending with Robert was my beginning with myself. And that self, the one who sold the house and stood up to the man who was supposed to protect him, that self is someone my mother would recognize. Someone she'd be proud to call her son. Someone who finally learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, loving freely, and leaving the past where it belongs, in the rearview mirror of a life moving forward. What would you have done in my position? If you discovered your own family was plotting against you, would you have had the courage to fight back, or would you have kept hoping things would change? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories about overcoming family trauma and finding your own path. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even against family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to be loved for exactly who you are, not who others want you to be. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.